Our speaker today, hey Mike, is Dr. Michael Lewis. He's author of the book Getting Wiser 101, Essential Life Learning and Inspiring Stories. This is part 3 of his book. We've had him here before with 1 and 2, and I know this is going to be very enjoyable and informative and most likely inspirational. So please welcome Dr. Michael Lewis.
Can you hear me? Is that working?
Yes.
So it's quite amazing to me that this is the 7th time that I've given a talk, this Tuesday morning group. And my wife told me to not let you in on a following secret, but I'm going to anyway. Since each of us are getting older and our memories aren't as good as they used to be, this is the same talk I've given every time, but nobody's noticed. But I can't resist repeating one of my favorite introductions, which is Ray Meyer, who was coach of the DePaul Blue Demons in his 90s, said there are 3 stages in life: youth, adulthood, and you look good. And I'm thinking, yeah, you look good. Another favorite of mine was George Burns, when he was bending over to tie his shoes, said, while I'm down here, is there anything else I should be doing? But today I want to talk about awe. So what is awe? Are especially joyous moments when we have an overwhelming feeling of reverence and admiration produced by something grand and sublime. Psychologist Abraham Maslow described these experiences transcendent moments of pure joy, wonder, and elation, involving intense feelings of happiness and well-being. We're swept beyond our ordinary sense of self. And there are many things that can trigger this feeling of awe. And I love I'll give you some examples. I love the term collective effervescence. So for example, when we saw Michael Jordan, and especially this year when the Bears win the Super Bowl, music, beautiful music can create awe, and beautiful art or architecture can create awe, or being in nature, or a new birth. This is my wife with our first grandchild, day 1. And sometimes I couldn't resist showing you my latest grandchildren. These are my 2 latest grandchildren that are in a nest in our backyard. These are Cooper's hawks, and these are the proud parents, Daddy and Mommy. And I'd love to, in the question and answer period, give you some fascinating details about the Cooper's hawks. But what we really want to talk about today, the most common cause of awe is moral beauty. So what is moral beauty? Moral beauty is examples of exceptional virtue, character, ability, and accomplishments. Moral beauty shows us the best of what we can be. The following are some examples found in the Old Testament. There's Abraham's hospitality to strangers. There's Ruth's loyalty and kindness to Naomi, captured by the famous words, "Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you stay, I will stay. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. And then Joseph's forgiveness of his brothers, and Esther's courage in attempting to save her people. So these biblical examples are awe-inspiring, but each generation needs its own examples. So I wanted to give you some examples of moral beauty from Getting Wiser, people who exude moral beauty. This is my mother, Beatrice Lewis. This was her celebrating her 104th birthday. This was her 86 years earlier on her honeymoon. This was a birthday not long ago where we surprised her with two of her grandchildren. So I grew up in Houston, Texas in the 40s and 50s. And so naturally you assume that this is what our family room looked like. Then following is a typical scene in our backyard. But to introduce my mother, I'd like to use an example. This is a conversation I had with an elderly Chinese man who had immigrated here, and he'd lived in the country. And had asked him, what was the happiest moment in your life? And he said that his wife one time had gone into Shanghai, into the big city, and she had had this wonderful dish of Peking duck. And she kept talking about how wonderful the Peking duck was. So he said, that was the happiest moment of my life. The fact that my wife enjoyed that Peking duck so much. And that story really resonated with me because it epitomized her mother, my mother. Her joy came from other people's happiness. And so many people told me that she was the most genuinely unselfish person that they had ever met. She would say every day, if you can do something to make life easier for someone, I think you're blessed to have that opportunity. And the more you give of yourself, the happier you'll be. A neighbor next door told me that even when she was a child, she was always taking care of other people. She just felt more deeply. She'd take more joy in your happiness and care more deeply about your sadness. There'd be times where I'd be laughing on the phone with her and mention a friend who was in the hospital, and she'd suddenly burst into tears. And even though she knew all of our strengths and weaknesses and foibles, she just loved us unconditionally. She was like a magic mirror that reflected back our best selves. The Buddhist concept of mudita, pure unselfish joy and the good fortune of others, applied to her. She had that splendid capacity to feel happy simply because you were happy. This is Hyman Farfel. He's the grandfather of a friend of mine. It's another example of moral beauty. He was born in Russia, and in the early 1900s, he immigrated to New York City with his wife and 8 children. His family might have looked similar to this. They lived in a small apartment where the children slept on chairs or on the floor, and waves of friends and relatives would come from Russia and stay with them. He had a small grocery business, and a partner one day ran away with the cookie jar. So he'd taken all the money from the business and left Hyman Farfel to start over and try to support his family. Years later, the partner returned, knocking on Hyman's door, asking for help. His wife naturally wanted to throw the bum out, but Hyman, without hesitation, invited him in for dinner and offered to help him. He felt a moral imperative to accept the man who'd cheated him, not because he deserved it, but because he needed help. Hyman's profound belief in God was so strong He didn't need to indoctrinate his children. His example spoke loud enough. This is Johanna Tabin, and she's seen here with her husband. She just radiates moral beauty. She just overflowed with kindness and compassion and was always focusing on other people. She just had the ability to always choose the right words to soothe and heal people who had emotional pain. She'd send me patients from time to time, and a typical phone call would be, "Please take good care of my friend. She's a remarkable, generous person who can sometimes be a little demanding and is a little down on her luck just now." So I met Johanna and her husband Julius through their son Jeff, and I've told you about Jeff before. He began the Himalayan Cataract Project, which has now restored sight to more than 1 million people in underserved areas at no cost to the patient. So the profits from all of my books go to the Himalayan Cataract Project, and I do have a few here for sale. This is when my wife and I visited him in Ghana. This is somebody who was blind for years, and this is the very first moment when they can see. It's one of the most extraordinary moments. But we've already talked about Jeff in the past, so we're in one of Jeff's previous lives, he had summited the highest mountain on all 7 continents. And here's 2 photographs of Jeff climbing. Here's one, and here's another. And he told me that he frequently got newspaper clippings from his mother about climbing accidents. Maybe some of you can help me understand why his mother was concerned about Jeff's safety. There's a famous story about Jeff flying from Boston to Chicago to Seattle on his way to Nepal to summit Mount Everest. When he was ready to depart and turned to the seatmate next to him, it was his mother, who wanted to take one last opportunity to try to persuade him not to climb Everest. So she did that on the flight from Chicago to Seattle. This was the result. This was him on the top of Everest. So he didn't listen very well to his mother. She was a Freudian analyst, and she spent uncounted hours helping me to write this book about Abraham Maslow. He had a very different outlook than Freud's, and she didn't agree with many of his premises, but her help dramatically improved the book. Even at the end of her life, she never stopped caring about others and inspiring others. I was going to read 2 emails that she sent to me in the last month of her life. "Dear cherished friend, I hope we can get together in the next couple of days. My test results revealed that I have a stage 4 lung tumor. I'm hoping the treatment will be easily tolerated, as well as offering some real hope. Nevertheless, the future is crazily clouded. I'm dwelling on my blessings. Your friendship is one of the wonderful things on my mind." Then one more email. "Dear cherished friend, I cannot predict anything except seeing you and your mother would feel wonderful. I'm delighted to hear that your mother is recovering well from a recent surgery and the precious time that you had together. Love, Johanna." So it's remarkable that during her last days on earth, while fighting for her own life, she's concerned about our well-being and taking care of us and comforting us. So I learned many life lessons from Johanna Tabin. Focus on what's important to the other people around you and take genuine pleasure in their success. And never take friendship for granted, because one never knows what tomorrow will bring. Uh, this is Greg Ekbom. He is seen here, and he's a successful surgeon. He had, by his own acknowledgement, a wonderful marriage, wonderful friends and colleagues. He had just a wonderful life. But unexpectedly, everything changed. In 2011, his wife Eva died suddenly from a ruptured brain aneurysm. His son, seen on the far left, had a near fatal motor vehicle accident and tragically subsequently passed away from an accidental overdose in 2019. Having lost his wife and only child in the space of 8 years, Greg, a devout Christian, by his own acknowledgement, entered a long period of darkness. He cried out to God to give him strength. He questioned his faith. He said, I turned to scripture and came to realize that both Moses and Caleb had been called by God to immense tasks. Moses had obeyed reluctantly and Caleb wholeheartedly. Still, God was able to use them both to carry out his plan. I understood that even with my weaknesses and fears and doubts, God in his grace could use me for his purposes. He went on to say that since he had known darkness and brokenness and pain, he thought his suffering could help others and to give them more hope. He said he sensed that God was calling me to encourage and support amputee patients. So he started a nonprofit and applies his surgical and teaching skills and treating amputees in Kenya, Democratic Republic of Congo, and now he's spending a lot of time in Ukraine. And these are two of his patients. He said, one of the great opportunities I have as a healthcare provider is to be a purveyor of hope, even when things feel hopeless. That's the assignment God has given me, and I'm not finished yet. So, why is it important to share examples of moral beauty? They help us to answer Abraham Joshua Heschel's question, what way of living is compatible with the grandeur and mystery of life? People with moral beauty inspire us and enrich our lives by showing us the best of what we can be. We feel we're at one with the world, belonging to it instead of outside looking in. And scientific studies demonstrate that being inspired by moral beauty actually can even lengthen our life expectancy. We feel more loving and accepting and connected to each other, as I said. So in Genesis 28:17, Jacob had a dream of a ladder connecting heaven to earth. And one of these examples, artistic rendering, may resonate with you. Here's one and another, and this is William Blake. So I hope that this feeling of awe generated by these examples of moral beauty will inspire each of us to attempt to continue to climb the ladder as high as we're capable. Thank you very much. So I'm happy to take any questions on this, on Chicago Bulls, on Gazoos, or anything else.
That was interesting, Dr. Lewis. What do you think is the state of moral beauty and caring for others today in the United States?
Are you talking about in medicine or
in person to person or in general?
well,
It could be in medicine.
I think that I think we're all very aware that we're in an extremely polarized state. But I think part of the point of this talk is that there are many examples of moral beauty, and that's what we should focus on, and that's really the answer. That as much polarization as there is, there's still room and grounds for optimism.
Does one need to have a religion or a certain religion to qualify?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Does one require a religious belief in order to be in this category? And which one?
In the book Getting Wiser, one of my friends, whose name is Jim Munson, specifically answers that because he acknowledges that he's an atheist, but says that he tries very hard to lead a moral life. So I think the answer is that many people get great comfort from religion, from all religions, but that it certainly is in no way necessary to be a moral person and to lead a moral life.
You mentioned that you wrote a book about Maslow, and he's famous for the hierarchy of needs. Am I right about that?
Correct.
So, do you think that people that are starving and are on the very bottom of the hierarchy of needs can make room in their life for moral beauty? And how do you put that into Maslow's ideas of a hierarchy?
So just to flesh out the question, Abraham Maslow was a famous psychologist who was a mentor to me in college. And at the time, Freud dominated psychology, and Freud's ideas were based on his patients who had serious mental illness. Maslow said, let's take a different approach. Let's look at the people in the world that we would most admire and see what they're like. And he coined a term, self-actualization, which is striving to be the best we can be. The hierarchy that you referred to is the idea that the first thing that we need is, to focus on food and shelter and safety, and then a sense of belonging, which this group beautifully does, and then a feeling of being loved. And then you can go on and help fulfill your potential. Obviously, if you're concerned about putting food on the table, it's more challenging, but there's countless examples of people who are in poverty, who are leading a moral life. So that would be my answer.
Arnie,
I don't have any other.
I have a question for the doctor, and maybe others will come out of this. At your opening, I'm thinking about your use of the word awe. And I was thinking of awe before I heard you as something that would happen to me. In other words, wow, we opened the door when we went to Grand Canyon and you walked to the rim. And that's awe-inspiring. So I thought of awe as something that happened to me. But now I'm a senior and I'm surrounded by seniors. And we have some seniors on Zoom. Some are homebound. Is awe something that happens to us, or do we need to be proactive and look for those episodes that we really are seeking awness? And it isn't so much that it's going to hit us. We may see it in everyday life in ways that we're just not looking at it the right way. So how would you, am I looking at this the right way? I mean, you've inspired me to think of awe in a broader context. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think it's a wonderful question. I would answer it this way. One of the things that interested me in this subject is that I think intuitively we think of awe. The first thing that comes to mind is nature, is going to the Grand Canyon and being overwhelmed by the beauty. But the expression that I love is the poetry in the ordinary. In my backyard, there are these Cooper's hawks that are building a nest and have just produced 4 chicks. I've given talks on photography, and one of the points I make is that photography helps increase your powers of observation. We've all seen hundreds of thousands of flowers, but how often do we really stop and take a close look at that flower? And when you do, you see things that that you probably never noticed before. So I think part of it is a mindset. I think that part of the idea is back to the question about our time today. If you want to find examples of polarization, you can, but I think you should seek examples of moral beauty. So I think it's active as well as passive.
Proactive.
Yes.
Thank you.
Couple of things. You're talking about the awe and beauty and so forth. As I tried to explain to my wife the other day, that thing that just scared the hell out of you, and I think we all know we're dealing with them now. I call them cicadas. It's just Bob speak for cicada. But I said, look at it. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Ah. But that's one thing every day, literally every day, I am in awe of just looking at animals and leaves and things like that, particularly though creatures, that are moving around, the markings on them are just remarkable. We did a swamp tour a couple of weeks ago. We were down in New Orleans and we went on a swamp tour to see the alligators. They're gorgeous. They really are gorgeous. But the other thing that I want to share with you, because you were talking earlier about being happy, I've been a member of Al-Anon for almost 24 years now. And for many of those years, I attend a Saturday morning open AA meeting. An open AA meeting means it's open to drunks as well as non-drunks. And there was a young man one time when I was in the meeting in Dallas who made the following statement. He said, "The happiest moments of my life have all been unplanned." And that really resonated with me because, yeah, you can hope to be, but you really can't plan to be that happy. So I just wanted to share that.
First of all, thank you. Very inspiring. Sort of an observation and then a question. When I was a young man, I belonged to the Boy Scouts, and one of their mottos was "Do a good deed daily." And it seems to me that self-actualization when you're 10 is too difficult to understand, but you can understand "do a good deed daily." I'd just like your observations on that, please.
I'll give you a very personal response to that. And this gets back to this question of actively seeking. Literally every day, I think of 3 things that I'm grateful for that day, and always new things. We're all grateful for our families and our health. But these are new things. I mean, one will be seeing this amazing, beautiful group of people in this room. I also, in addition to thinking of those three things, I try to think of at least 3 random acts of kindness to perform to express my appreciation for those 3 things. Having read hundreds of books on leading a satisfying life, every single one of them, without exception, talks about gratitude and just being aware of your blessings. There was this question about Maslow's hierarchy. So wherever you are on the hierarchy, you can still be aware of your blessings.
Yes, well, I'm grateful for the person or people I often see outside of a grocery store or outside of a parking lot or, along a curb in the street who are gathered together asking for alms or for help. And I really make it a point to respond to them because they do so much to help me remember how much I have by comparison. And it's not my doing, it's just the way things have turned out. And for them, I just want to acknowledge them and let them feel worthy of the attention I could give them.
You use several quotes from the Bible, but my question is, aren't there other great books that are written? As, for example, aren't there things in the Quran that would make sense to quote, or quotes from Buddhist and other great books and thinking rather than the Bible? The problem with the Bible is it's got a lot of horrible things in it also.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I could have gone on for hours quoting Buddhist teachings and teachings from the Quran. I just finished reading a book about Muhammad Ali, who in his mind, Islam is a religion of peace. So, as we said before, every religion has many, many positive sayings and inspirational sayings, and terrible things have been done in the name of most, if not all, religions. So, yes, of course, you're absolutely right. There are countless religious books and other books that I could have quoted.
Doctor, I have another question. Are you encouraged or discouraged by young people, or is it normal for us old folks to think, well, they got it wrong? And our elders probably said the same to us. How do you feel about the state of people not our age?
Well, my answer to that is I think it's sort of always the best of times and the worst of times. There's a quote from Socrates talking about how the youth of today is just not, the way they used to be. And I think you'll find that in every generation. I think there's many things, as we've already said, to be discouraged about, and many things to be very optimistic about.
So we can learn from each other.
Correct.
Thank you.
Looks like it's a wrap, folks. Dr. Lewis, thanks very much for being here, folks. There are books on a table up here if you're interested in purchasing. So
And I also have some posters that
thought those
were
were-
popular in the past for grandchildren, particularly love from the Michael Jordan era, the Bulls, and you're welcome to take those with you.